Good evening, Warriors, and welcome into another edition of the R&R Sports Report. I'm your host, Randy Isbell, and with me, at least for the first hour this week, is one of my 87 bosses that I have throughout all of my jobs. Alisha Alexander here, getting ready to talk all LC sports, because let's be frank, with all of the playoff stuff going on and Robert Hagan being gone the last couple of weeks, kind of abandoned the local stuff to talk about NFL playoffs. So perfect time to get Alisha back on here and catch everybody up with what is happening right now in the world of Warrior athletics. Alisha, how's it going?
It's going. Trying to keep puppies under control. And, yeah.
Best of luck there. Kid is listening in, which is always fun. I have said this on a different show that is yet to air right now, but Office right now is in a bit of a resetting up. Got a new stand-up desk, so having a lot of fun working there. There's all sorts of stuff behind me that I'm trying to hide because it's in a lot of work. Addie has some beautiful art that she put on my whiteboard. I didn't get a chance to talk about that on the other show, but I have to give her a shout out there. She worked really hard on it yesterday. You also checked it out on next week's episode of Bad Brackets. If you don't know what that is, it's a new show that we have started. You can just search that on YouTube for Bad Brackets. We go through different topics and figure out who is going to be the best of the best in bracket format. And basically, it's an excuse for three of my friends to yell at me for an hour for how horrible my brackets are. If that sounds fun to you, the animated Disney movie bracket episode launched on Monday. Alisha looks like she's excited.
That's up my
It was Harry Broadhurst, it was Robert Hagan, and it was Haley Moses who yelled at me for an hour and a half over my bracket format and then argued with each other on which one ended up being the winner. You can go check that out there. Also, that went down here today is, yes, Hunter does want airtime.
Hunter is right here. He's asleep.
The Baseball Hall of Fame announced three not nominees, candidates, I guess. Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Todd Helton have all made it into the Hall of Fame. They'll all have their big speeches in the summer. And Alisha, I know you're a big Joe Mauer person. Just kind of talk about these three real quick before we hit into LC stuff.
I'm really excited about this ballot. We're getting into the point where, these are the guys that I watched growing up. I've been a big Joe Mauer fan. When the All-Star game was in Anaheim in 2010, I didn't buy, whoever the Angels All-Star was at that point. I bought a Joe Mauer All-Star t-shirt and took a picture in front of the Joe Mauer locker at FanFest. I love Joe Mauer. I love everything. I love that he has twins and he played for the Twins. Freddie obviously loves them too. I'm really excited for Todd Helton. I've been wanting him to get in for a long time, and it took the sixth ballot, but I think he's more than deserving. And then, Beltre, we all knew was going to be a first ballot, but I was pleasantly surprised with Joe Mauer being a first ballot guy.
Yeah, numbers-wise, you'd have 289 votes this year to get into the Hall. You have to have 75% of the votes. Beltre easily made it with 95% of the votes. Todd Helton, just over 300, about just under 80% that where he got in. Joe Mauer made it by 4 votes. That's how close it was for him. And Billy Wagner, who only has 1 year left after this year to stay on the ballot, he ended up 5 votes short of making it in this year. So one last chance for him and decent chance for him to make it. Gary Sheffield in his last chance ended up about, where am I looking at? 43 votes short. So Gary Sheffield will not make it into the Hall of Fame unless the Legends Committee tries to get him in that way. Speaking of that video, or the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee, we won't call them the Legends Committee, but they got Jim Leyland in this year. So he also made it as well. Really sad that Bartolo Colon, even though, no, he's not a Hall of Famer, but
the guy won a Cy Young. That's pretty cool. I think people forget about that because all I think about is the one home run that he hit. Big Sexy.
Yes, absolutely. But he only gets 5 votes, so he will no longer be on the ballot. Neither were Jose Bautista, Matt Holliday, Adrian Gonzalez. They just get not enough votes, which none of them, I believe, are full-on Hall of Famers. But be really interesting. Like you said, I'm right there with you. We're in that era now of the players that I watched growing up and slightly more into the teenage years where I watched a lot more baseball. And it's always fun to kind of see them come up. We're also kind of past that era of that big steroid era in the late 90s, early 2000s. They have kind of shifted out, so now they're not um, in the way really as far as ballots. Alex Rodriguez is still on the ballots, eating up some votes, even though we all know he's never going to get in.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see where they go now. It's also nice that we're actually getting people into the hall again. We've had a couple of years lately where nobody got in. So.
Yeah, was it one last year? I think maybe.
Yeah, I think one from the actual committee, and then the baseball era committee put in a few.
Yeah.
As well. We'll talk a bit more about that with Erik Watkins in the second hour, get his thoughts as somebody from Florida and what he thinks of Beltre, Maurer, and Helton getting into the Hall of Fame. But now we're going to spend the rest of this first hour really talking about local stuff. If you have joined in the last couple of weeks with myself and Robert Taylor and you've really liked our NFL talk, that is an hour number 2. Erik Watkins will join in. Robert Taylor might also join in and brag about his Kansas City Chiefs as he likes to do. But that will all be in hour number 2. Right now we're focusing on local stuff. And before you bounce away, if you are non-local, hit this top story, and you really have to hear this because what Case Why Not has been doing down in Lapway has been amazing. He will guarantee set the Idaho boys basketball scoring record on Thursday night when the Wildcats take on Clearwater Valley. I'm so happy that it is set up where he will break the record at home. I think that place is going to be absolutely insane. I'm going to be watching it online because I'll be working that night. But so excited for Case Why Not. I've talked to him once or twice over the last couple of years, just doing radio duties and working the Avista Holiday Tournament. Just an awesome kid. I've known Zach Eastman for years. I've bowled with him a couple of times years ago before he got the head coaching job, and what he's done there has been phenomenal. But we all knew Case had a really good chance of breaking this record coming into the year. And then he was 70 some away coming into Friday's game against Genesee. And then he put up 68
just casual points. 60. It was a 68-15 and
68 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. Taryn, who works for the Tribune, put in the stat that he contributed for over 90% of the points that Lapway scored. And they scored over 100 points against Genesee in that contest. He played all but the final minute of that game. He had 20 points in the first quarter alone, had 5 threes in the contest. Absolutely insane. Chase, even though you misspelled the cuss word, you can't say cuss words, kid. I'll go upstairs and yell at you. But yes, absolutely a ton. Oh, hold on. Answering a question real quick. Things all over the place right now. But yeah, he is 6 points away now from breaking the Idaho school record. Jared Mercer of Kamei has the record right now, 25-89. Spencer Lynn was 4 points behind, and now Why Not just 5 points away, just to show you how crazy Lapway has been. Titus Year Out, also of Lapway, is 8th all time with 2,034. He plays for Idaho right now. Case Why Not full commit to Utah State next year. So again, a lot of great things going on with Zach Eastman and the Wildcats. And again, what Case has been able to do. We've seen some fantastic scores at LC, but to do what he's doing right now, where he just takes over games, is insane.
I mean, he's making national headlines for a school in a city that no one's ever heard of, unless you live here.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point where Lapway is getting ranked number 1 in the country as far as small schools go. Case Why Not, I still believe, I mean, obviously scoring 68 points is definitely going to help your average, but I believe he's still the highest average scoring player in the entire country right now. So, yeah, Lapway is definitely getting out there as far as getting notoriety. Obviously, the video that Kyrie Irving sent out to the Wildcats a few years ago helped get the name out. But it's just always fun. I mean, we talk about the White Pine League as far as football goes and the craziness of 8-man football, and Lapway is a part of that. But once we get into the basketball season, it is all Lapway all the time as far as the small schools go. They completely dominate. They did not win the state tournament last year. They lose in the championship game, but Zach Eastman has them raring and ready to go. Let's now move on to what Alicia and I do most, and that is focus on LCSC sports. And we're going to start with the women's basketball team, as they had
Speaking of
quite
high scoring,
an amazing weekend for them. 192 points combined in their two contests against Warner Pack and Multnomah. I'm just going to give you the floor before we really look at the rest of their schedule coming up and what they've done so far. But that Friday night game with Callie and Ellie, scoring 65 combined points. I mean, they've been around for LC for a long time. You're really close with Callie. Just kind of talk about that game and your emotions from it.
No, I think that was huge. I mean, the team's kind of going through it a little bit emotionally with some injuries. So to have the leaders on that team, Callie and Ellie, step up for that game was huge. And to break a 30-year record, a 30-year-old record set by, one of the best players to ever set foot. Well, back then it was Warrior Gym. But Julie Stringer was a part of that record 30 years ago when she dropped 40. Callie scored 38 points, career high, tied for third most in a single game. She hit 7 threes, which is tied for, her scoring title, I think is, or scoring total is fourth, her threes are third, something like that. Denny will jump on and tell us what it is exactly. And then Ellie was 1 point shy of her career high with 27. And that was a close game for a little bit too. Warner Pack, their record doesn't reflect. They started off the season one of the top teams in the conference, and then kind of let some of the other girls play on Sunday, because they played Saturday, Sunday against Multnomah. And Tatum Breaker came out, freshman. Her dad played here, and she matched Callie's threes. They each hit 7 threes over the weekend, and Tatum finished that night with 21 points. And it was funny. Ashley Bachman brought it up to me later on over the weekend. In my post, I called Callie a walking 3-pointer, and Ashley goes, "Yeah, she hit 7 3-pointers. That's 21 points. Callie, where's number 21?"
No,
didn't even put that together. But that was
sometimes you have those other people that just catch things that you don't.
That's what interns are for.
Obviously, both basketball teams. We'll talk about the men here in a couple of minutes. They're both having a really good season, but the women have been near the top of the country the last couple of years, just trying to get over that last step. And you have this duo with Callie and Ellie, and Hannah going through her stuff. And I don't know if we are able to talk about that. You broke some news to me last week, but you just brought it up. Some of their young players too. Tatum had a fantastic weekend. Satara, really got on the board points as well. Had 17 in that game on Saturday. Herring has been really good inside. Obviously, we were curious what was going to happen when Sarah left last year. So a lot of the youngsters are really stepping up for this team too.
Yeah, I mean, we have obviously back-to-back conference player of the year with Callie. Maddie Holmes been first team all conference 2 or 3 times. Ellie's obviously been she's getting better every year, but she's been consistently one of the best players on the team. But to know that the roster may not be as large, but the depth off the bench, though there's not a ton of them, the quality of play is there. So you have people like Tatum who go in and drop 21 points just effortlessly. 7 3-pointers a game for a freshman on the road is huge.
But now we are getting down to it. We got 10 games left, I think, in the regular season, starting to wind down here. Right now, LC 15-2 on the year, 11-1 in conference play, 7th in the country right now. Just a half game lead over Oregon Tech, who's 20th in the country. That was a really fun game a couple of weeks ago between those two.
They're the real deal. They're good this year. They've got one of the best players in the conference in Olivia Sprague, and it's going to be a really exciting matchup when we go. It's the last regular season weekend of the year.
But now you start getting into, the playoff games and the conference games and try to figure out what's going to happen. You have the senior leadership, but for a lot of these freshmen, and the sophomores have gotten a little bit of experience with it, but what do you expect from some of the younger players once they get into actual tournament play?
I think Sir? Freddie, you're not a cat.
Are you sure?
He's in the window.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are you sure it's not a cat?
Well, we got his DNA results back yesterday, and it did not say anything about feline. Oh, hold on. Freddie, there we go. I think the older girls have done a really good job kind of getting them ready mentally. You could see a little bit last year because I was in Sioux City. I was there when Lindsay went in, and you could see a little bit of the not stage fright, but kind of hitting them like this is the national tournament. It's different. It was different in the first and second round because we were at home. They were playing in the activity center. Freddie. Oh no! Hold on a second. He's gonna go eat something he's not supposed to. What? Pause.
Oh, we can't really pause. We're live, but we'll let Alisha go do her thing.
Time out. Freddie, come here.
No full timeouts. I got no commercials to run. I got nothing to do here. But I'll just let you know that this weekend, LC is back on the road. They'll take on Evergreen State at noon on Friday, and then on Saturday they'll take on Northwest at 3 p.m. They'll be back here at home on February 2nd and 3rd to take on College of Idaho and Eastern Oregon. But just kind of hit on with the way that the freshmen are going to have to step up in big situations. One thing I'll just quickly change to coaching staff changes usually become an issue for a lot of schools. Not an issue here for the Warriors. Kaylin Orlandi, who obviously was with Brian for many, many years and as assistant, there's not been one misstep between those two coaches at all.
And I think, she's been with these girls. The thing with Kaylin is she recruited these girls with the exception of one or two. She was the one who did the most of the recruiting. Even still, she's still super, super involved in the recruiting. Obviously, it's her program now. But she's had those relationships with these players since they were in high school, since they were playing, AAU and club and all that. So I think, if anything, the relationship between player and coach has only gotten stronger. Brian ran a fantastic program. They did amazing things. And I think that allowed Goose to build that relationship and to just have it continue on. And she brings in Callie Mosgrip, who played in the program, was playing in those alumni games. She's local. She's been around since she graduated. It's only strengthened the bond on the team, which I think is going to help those freshmen and those sophomores who are in their second year, hopefully competing in the national tournament, just because the team chemistry is that much stronger. And I think she's able to communicate what it's like to play at that level, because she played for a national title. She was on the team that played in the national title game, I think her junior year. So it's a little bit different when it comes to those talks. Brian can only speak from a coach's standpoint, whereas Kaylin's going to say, this is what I experienced. It's going to be similar to your experience, and here's what we're going to do.
And I think the other thing that a lot of people may not realize is the depth that the Cascade Conference is starting to build on all sports. But you look just on the women's side, where the last couple of years where I've helped you cover this team, it's been LC and Eastern Oregon, and it was those two, and everyone else was just trying to play for third. Yeah. This year, like we talked about, Oregon Tech is legit. They're 20th in the country. Southern Oregon is ranked as well. And even some of the smaller schools that usually struggle have put up good performances. Walla Walla, I think, has improved a lot from what we've seen. Yeah. So just kind of talk about now, we get not just 2 games during the regular season where you go up against top competition, but you get at least 6. And there's a lot of others that are going to really put you to the test. And LC's seen that with a loss at home earlier this year.
That Bushnell game, they have 2 of the best players in the conference, in Aspen Slifka and Libby Mathis, and it's hard to match them because Libby Mathis is a force on the inside. Aspen Slifka can shoot. She can play inside. Bushnell's record may not be at the top, but they've got 2 of the top players, and sometimes they were both on fire that night. And you're going to get games like that during the season. Sorry.
Your dog's not doing much help. He's supposed to be helping you today, and he's doing the opposite.
Oh, he's got a toy. Even looking at teams like Walla Walla, they've improved so much. And sometimes it's just that one piece, that one player that really turns things around, or sometimes it's a coach. And Walla, the pups are playing. You're going to hear them growling in a second.
That's all right.
But yeah, the depth of the conference, it's good because it helps, strength of schedule. And then we also have those non-conference games that they play. They played Carroll, they played Providence, they split that one. I'm watching the puppy. But yeah, they lost to Carroll, but it was a close game, and then they beat Providence, who's still a pretty high-ranked team.
Move on to the men's side, and we had a lot of questions coming into the year. A lot of it was because of all the injuries that they had last year, and just trying to figure out who was going to really be able to step up with this team. It struggled early on, and they were 2-4 to start the year. had like the crazy start where they were on the road to both Arizona and Gonzaga, just having those cool experiences playing against some NCAA schools, and came out of the gates a little slow from that. But since then have been absolutely phenomenal. 11-1 over their last 12 games. Their one loss was to defending champion College of Idaho. And it's like the women's squad where it's every night. Like I talk about this with Danner all the time. It's like every night the leading scorer seems to be somebody different.
Yeah.
And if it's not just a leading scorer, like I have names on here for this weekend, and it's a different list every time. I know Jaden Bradley is really, yeah, you're good, has really taken over as far as scoring wise. He had 25 points on Friday as the Warriors won that one 93-78 against Warner Pack. But John Lustig, after he came back from his injury, has scored at least 15 points in each of the last two games. Alton Hamilton, the freshman inside, has been playing more and more minutes. He gets into double figures in both games last weekend. But I think to me, the one that really stood out to me is Sam Stockton, who as a senior, you know, he will get into the starting lineup, but he's not really the focal point of the offense as you would have expected as a senior. And he's done a great job of just kind of being that role player for them. And it really stood out this last weekend against Warner Pack, nearly a triple-double. And I'm sure Denny can tell you the last time a Warrior had a triple-double. I have no idea when that was.
Demick Mitchell used to get close.
Yeah. But 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists for Sam on Friday. Then 8 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists on Saturday. So Sam is really coming into his own and has really become a leader on the squad.
And he takes care of the basketball so well. Obviously, like you said, he's not that offensive force. He's not going to be like Jaden Bradley scoring all the time. He's not a shooter. It's not his game. But he rebounds the ball really well. And I mean, what's wild to me is when you look at our stats, Sam leads the team in blocks.
Yeah.
In block shots. Sam Stockton, I mean, he's not Anthony Peoples Jr., he's not Alton, he's not a post guy, but Sam is where he needs to be when he needs to be there.
That was a stat yesterday when I was writing your midseason reports that I was shocked on that he was leading blocks and by a decent margin too. Like
he's got into a game. When I go back and look at the stats.
Yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal. This team has been really fun to watch. Like I said, I had a lot of question marks coming in. Again, last year was a down year for them because it felt like every other game somebody was going down with an injury. And the roster they were trying to throw out there was Ralph Grayson Hunt having to skip his redshirt year and really was a big focal point. Now he is the one injured. Hopefully he can come back here for the last part of the year. But what Austin Johnson has been able to do is phenomenal.
That was kind of how the year started too. You know, we had Makari Morris, a true freshman, come in and get into the starting lineup, and then he's out for the season with an injury. We had, a couple other guys leave the team for personal matters, so we kind of didn't know, especially early on, what things were going to look like, and they've really been able to right the ship and not let those adversities take them down. Years past, it's just been unfortunate who's gone down when and what's been going on. They haven't been able to really get over that hump, and this year, especially after that weekend, that SOU OIT weekend at home, it's pretty evident. I'm shocked they're not even receiving votes. I was shocked they're not in top 25. It blew my mind, but I mean, those were two impressive wins over Warner Pack and Multnomah, and we'll see what goes on this weekend. And then the next poll comes out on the 31st.
Yeah, I was shocked with you. I was guaranteeing basically that they were going to at least receive votes, but I thought they should be in the top 25. Right now they're tied with College of Idaho at the top of the conference standings. They do lose the head-to-head right now to the Yotes, but that second game coming up very soon, and that one should be a lot of fun at the Haywood FCU Activity Center. But especially, 13-5, sure, the record's not like bouncing off the page for you, but it's because of their slow start, and they played some really tough teams to start the year as well. I mean, this team I really think is getting completely overlooked. And it's just kind of shocking to me. So again, like the women, they will be on the road this weekend at Evergreen State on Friday at 2 p.m. and then against Northwest on Saturday at 5 p.m. But then it's a fun one the week following that, Friday, February 2nd at 7 p.m. against those defending champion College of Idaho Yotes. Definitely show up and make it really loud there at the Activity Center. We'll talk about the Golden Throne that happens on Friday here soon. Let's make it as close to as loud on that day as we will for the Golden Throne, please. It would be a lot of fun. And then Saturday, they'll take on Eastern Oregon at 6 p.m. So a couple really tough opponents there for the Warrior men as well. But that team, again, has been a very pleasant surprise to me, and we'll see where they go. We'll move on now to the tennis team, where the men got their first bit of action this last weekend. Was it the results that they were hoping for? But Kaifeng always schedules extremely hard opponents, especially early on in the year. And they took on both a couple NCAA schools in Idaho State and Boise State. But just kind of talk about this men's team real quick. A lot of new faces, as there always is going to be in college athletics. But Kaifeng has a huge group this year.
Yeah, he's got 16 on each side, which is the largest roster I think they've ever had. I was talking with Kai a little bit today, and we had our spring sports news conference yesterday. Randy, you were invited.
I did. My bad.
It's their roster is so deep this year, and you know this from writing the preview, that they're able to do home and away matches for the same team on the same day. So February 10th, the men are both home against Whitworth and away against Whitman at the same time. Both matches are at noon. So I think we'll see what the talent level is, because Kai knows how to recruit. He brings in people from all over the world. But the fact that he's able to give that many athletes an opportunity and just to have that depth, they're going to test that depth early. Because you saw the ISU and the Boise State matches, those are pretty heavy with returners. There were a couple freshmen inserted here and there. But it's going to be really exciting to see what the freshmen can do and see what that depth can do for the team moving forward. Because they are, they have those trips. They're going to the women go to Georgia, teams are going to Kentucky and Louisiana, and then conference is in San Antonio this year, or conference or independent or whatever you're going to call it, because it's an interesting situation there. But it's nice to have that depth for as much as they travel.
It's always surprising to me writing for the tennis team, especially for the previews, that how many different countries get represented on this tennis team. I forget the exact number that I wrote down yesterday, but it was double digits for both the men and the women, for not just people that are outside the country. It was like over 10 different countries are represented on both the men's and the women's teams, and what Kaifeng is able to do to bring in all those cultures. And then they all work as such a family. I had a lot of fun in the fall. I took a tennis class, so I was getting help remembering how to play this game. And usually it was the women's team that would come in and start doing their practice right after that class was getting done, and just seeing the camaraderie between their group as they're getting in, again, from people that are from all walks of life and different countries. And it's so much fun. Speaking of the women, they got a little bit of action back in October, but they will get going in February as well. We talked about Bonolo back in the fall, and the cool trip that she was able to do in New York for the Arthur Ashe award that she got. But there was some really good senior talent, I think, on this women's team. It'd be really interesting to see what they do their second year in that Red River Conference.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I love Bonolo. Bonolo and I, we're good friends. The interesting thing with international student athletes is they sometimes are a little older, just by the way the system works. Bonolo and I are the same age. She's actually 2 months older than I am. So we always have those fun conversations. Today she walked into the tennis center and I go, "Hey, we turned 30 this year," and she was not happy when I said that. And then Kai walked in and Kai goes, "I'm still older than both of you combined," which is pretty fun. But having her leadership, Andrea is a senior, and they've got people, Lena, Beatrice, who have been there for years, Maria, who's been there for a while. Just they have a good leadership core. Heidi's a senior, her second year here. There's no lack of leadership in that program, which is great considering how many freshmen they have.
Yeah, and usually in that setup, when you have that many seniors on a tennis team, the freshmen usually are not going to see a ton of action. All of their work will be in practices and getting their work in. But like you said, with the depth that they have and the amount of players that they have, freshmen are still going to get a lot of action out there on the court against other opponents. And Kai and Ryan are not going to have to try to finagle different rosters just to get somebody a couple of matches here and there. So
yeah, they do a really good job of mixing things up. And they'll play their six in singles and definitely change it up in doubles play and just throw in a couple of different names, and everyone's going to get a shot and everyone's going to get to play. And they do a really good job with that.
Yeah, your Excel sheet this year is going to be twice as long as it was last year for how many different doubles combinations
So
that
many
guy
pairings.
thought this going to use.
It was so long.
All right, now it is that time of the week that Robert and I usually just list off the record book because that is what happens when you talk about LCSC track and field. But I'm not going to do it this week because we got Alisha in here
Oh
and
gosh.
she's going to go off of all these different crazy records that happen. Basically, when we do our LC recap, especially during the spring when track and field is in full force, it is basically here are the 9 records that fell.
Let me
And
see.
it
Let me
just
pull
seems
up.
to be
Let
every
me pull it up.
single week.
I mean, records and the national qualifiers too.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. Let's see. Okay. That's from the first meet. Okay. So
Yep.
we had the
Yeah,
national
this is the
qualifier.
Lauren McCluskey Memorial Open from last
Yep,
week.
up in Moscow. So it's the closest they'll be all season is Moscow because obviously the majority of indoor is one in Spokane. And even if we wanted to host an outdoor meet this year, I don't know if you've seen Vulnerable, a water main broke and it is under about a foot of water right now.
Oh, I have not been down there since
Not
Chase
pretty.
had cross country, so I haven't been down there.
It's tough. Let's see. School records. In her very first attempt ever in college in the long jump, Sydney Zwina from Orofino demolished the long jump record, 5.52 meters for a B standard. On that same day, Jenna hit the A mark for the high jump to go back and defend her title, her indoor title. Let's see what else. More national qualifiers. Geraldine Correa in the 800. Madigan Kelly. She gets faster. I don't know how she does it. She just gets faster every single time. Sid in the triple jump. Emily Collins in the 400. Carter Gordon in the 600. Trent Johnson in the triple jump. Those are all national qualifiers. I'm looking at the record set in that meet on the second day. So Madigan, the record going into the weekend was like 8.63 in the 60 hurdles. Her prelim was 8.57. I made those graphics. Finals, she runs an 8.49. I'll remake those graphics. She just gets faster and faster. It amazes me. Trent Johnson in the triple jump pushed his record to 14.23 meters. That's a B standard. So he'll hopefully be going to nationals. I mean, he'll be planning on jumping further, I'm sure. This is just the second meet, so it's going to get even better. And the men's 4x4, it wasn't a national standard, but it was a school record by a good bit. They're at 3:21.62. That was Ike Hopper, Preston Cooper, Trent Johnson, and then Carter Gordon. So
yeah, it was always crazy because you were talking about all these standards getting hit, and all right, hopefully you could make it to nationals with the B. It's like we still got over a month.
Yeah.
Where they have to worry about it. They have several other meets, and so many athletes on the track and field squad just continue to improve. And
yeah, and there's people we haven't even seen yet. I mean, London Kirk did run this past weekend, and he's run the 600. He had the standard in the 600, but he prefers the 400, so he hasn't even run that yet in indoor. So, and he'll run the 200. 200 is indoor? I don't know. We'll find out. It is an indoor run. I get confused all the distances. But, he has yet to run. We have Carissa Lindner, who middle blocker in volleyball. She has yet to participate in indoor. We won't see Gianna Anderson in indoor. She's a javelin thrower. They don't throw pointy sticks inside bubbles, typically. Same thing with Kia. We won't see Kia until the spring, but there's still a good group of athletes that haven't competed yet because it's so early in the season. So those records are still going to fall. We have our sprinters get better every weekend. And it's nice. It's really neat to see. I don't know if you call it, I don't want to say it's the golden age of warrior track and field, but the program itself is still so new. That's why these records get broken a little bit more often than you'd see at other schools. But the fact that these records are being shattered, a lot of it by local talent, is what's really neat. You have Madigan and Annika and Emily, who are from Lewiston, Jenna's from Lewiston, London's from Deary, Sydney's from Orofino, Carter's from Coeur d'Alene. We have a thrower, Haley Appleford, who had what I think it was shot putter weight throw, but put her third all time. She's from Asotin. So just seeing the local talent come through and dominate is really neat.
Yeah, see, Chase, this is what you can do.
Yeah.
Just keep running.
Hey, Chase, just keep running back. Colby Wessels, for example, in cross country, he was, middle of the pack. He was one of our front runners throughout the regular season. Conference shows up. He finishes 6th or 7th in conference for his first all-conference honor, individually at least, and then leads us at nationals and finishes as an All-American. And he was middle of the pack the entire season. And I was talking to Tracy afterwards, Tracy Collins, and she said, yeah, I told him, this is after conference. You can do this. You are capable of doing this. And he really took that to heart and was an All-American, was our top finisher at Nationals. Local kids. His sister Katie's doing big things at UW, and he's doing big things here at LC.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, track and field and cross country are always fun to just see what the athletes are able to do, especially track and field, because this is our 4th year on the show covering track and field on the spring, and I think we've announced 200 records. It feels like, and that could be an understatement.
Madigan Kelly, that was her 7th track athlete of the week honor.
It's crazy. It was 10 for Callie Stevens, right?
10.
She had her 10.
I got 10. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about new sport here at LC that's going to have their first competition in Nebraska on Friday. LCSC dance. Have you figured out how you're going to write the recap to this yet?
No. I have some good friends in the SID world that are helping me out quite a bit with that one. And what's really nice is being able to talk to the athletes. When I was in college, I wrote about water polo, and I didn't know anything about water polo. So I talked to the athletes and said, tell me about water polo. So you learn the lingo a little bit there. I have a good friend growing up who was a dancer, so she's helped me quite a bit too. But it'll be a learning process for sure. They leave tomorrow. They're super excited. I'm super excited. And it's going to be tough. They're going to be competing against teams that are nationally ranked in the NAI, top 5 programs. But it's going to be good for them to see, okay, this is the world that we're stepping into. And it's unfortunate it's not streamed or anything like that. So I'm still trying to figure out how to cover that without being able to watch it. I've seen him perform at halftime, but still figuring out the scoring system and how that all works. But it's exciting. These girls are getting an opportunity to compete at the national level or against teams across the nation and represent LC athletics, I think, in a very new way. So it's going to be really exciting to see.
That's really cool with what LC has been able to do with this new dance team and going right out to Nebraska for their first meet. Like you said, they've done the halftime show a couple of times this year already, just trying to get some experience out there on the floor and trying new things. And it's a really cool thing of adding in a new sport, like looking through different Cascade Conference schools just to get stats and stuff. And you go to their website and you see all the different sports that they have that, LC is not a part of. And it's just wild to think of just the variety of college sports out there right now. Can we get esports at any point? I might have to come out of retirement for that. That'd be great.
There's the Cascade Conference itself just added beach volleyball as an official conference sport. So, I mean, that would be exciting to have. Soccer, we don't have soccer yet, but it's Cascade Conference sport is soccer. There's so many opportunities, and I mean, we're always working on improving in terms of Title IX and all that, and adding opportunities for student athletes to come and compete at LC State. So, I mean, C of I, we don't have as many sports as C of I, but I do like the smaller. We have such a good size student body for the Valley, I think.
Yeah, we're 40 minutes in. I just realized I never turned on this light over here. I'm going to do that here in a second. I looked over and went, I knew I missed something. That's great. Let's look.
You're just in the dark.
So you talked about the spring sports press conference that I was not out. You guys didn't miss me because I never asked questions. I just hang out.
And Danner wasn't there either. Danner was sick.
Oh, no. I'm glad I wasn't there because then you would have forced me to ask questions. Because Danner is really good about asking all the questions. But obviously, we've already talked about track and field a little bit. We talked about dance. But golf getting ready to come back in March. They had a really good fall, especially on the men's side. Obviously, Juan graduating after the fall season. So he's gone. And the other thing, just looking at it, is things go away for a couple of months and my old brain doesn't remember things. I totally forgot how young both of these teams are, especially on the women's side, but they have some fantastic talent on these squads. Just kind of talk about what they have coming up this spring while I turn on my light.
Yeah. I mean, it's such, they had a ton of turnover. You had a really strong men's team last year with Jorgen and Devin and Carlos. And then we kind of go into this year and the only returners was Juan and Bryden. Cassandra hasn't played yet. So we really didn't know what to expect. And Bryden really stepped up and he's been great. In his last collegiate tournament, Juan earned his first
that was
win.
Really cool.
So that was huge. They've got some really talented transfers too. So it's not like it's just a bunch of freshmen out there, even though the freshmen are good. you have Alex Navarro and Kai Kroll and Oscar Bela, who are all transfers and have that collegiate experience, which I think is super important. And the women's side, I feel like, is definitely more veteran led because you have your 2 seniors in Kyla and Dina. Dallas has stepped up and played really, really well. Kyla's having a breakout season. And then you have Chase Caruso, who, she's a freshman, but she's a Caruso. Right. She's basically been in the program since Devin was in the program. So the youngest of the Caruso siblings. And, I mean, look at the Cascade Conference in golf. You have to be able to compete with that when you have the 2 defending national title teams with UBC on both sides competing with you.
Yeah, British Columbia is insane. There were times where I saw the scores getting ready to do the write-up. I'm like, oh, hey, the LC did really good. But, they finished 40 strokes behind British Columbia.
Yeah.
But still got second. It was great. But British Columbia has been absolutely insane. The Warrior Invitation will be April 15th and 16th over the Lewiston Golf and Country Club as well. Right now they have 4 events scheduled before a Cascade Conference tournament, so a lot of golf action. And then, of course, baseball gets underway in just over a week. It's insane how fast all of this is coming up. We're flying towards February, which is my busiest month, and I know it's the same for you. Is that crossover time is brutal. But February 1st now is the opening day for LC baseball, and a lot of that is with this East-West challenge that they've created over the last couple of years. What a cool experience for LC to start their season against some of the best in the country.
How about that entire road trip? You open up with Tennessee Wesleyan, who's a series staple the last few years. Southeastern, number 2, or Southeastern second game, number 1 Southeastern, who's been number 1 in the standings for, it feels like, 10 years.
Right.
You know, we've got quite the rivalry with them now. Gosh, who else is in there? Bellevue,
Bellevue is also on Friday. You have Southeastern and Bellevue on the same day.
In 2 different places too. They're going to go from Phoenix to Mesa for that one.
It's crazy. And then they play St. Thomas that Saturday. And then the next week they're in California and they get a doubleheader against Hope International, who's 11th in the country. Vanguard the next day, they're 17th, and then they get St. Catherine as well. So
St. Catherine's a national tournament team. They were here for the opening round, I think 2 years ago. So
and then a full month of road games following that. LC doesn't have their first home games, I don't think, till March is what I was looking at. So just a wild road trip for them to begin with all of their ranked teams. To kind of talk about the differences that we should expect on the field for the team.
So very different from last year. Last year we had that big question mark in almost every position. This year we return our outfield. We return every infield position but shortstop, catcher. We don't return. Sam Olson's gone, but we have guys that played last year, and Jacob Marquez, who ended up playing first base last year when Charlie Updegrave was hurt. But Bula Ifan and Ifans typically do pretty well at LC State.
Right.
And then Jack Sheward, who are all good catchers. They can all swing the bat pretty well. So that'll be an interesting battle behind the plate to see who's there. But you've got either Jacob or Charlie Updegrave at first base, Pooh potentially playing second base. Dom at third was fantastic last year. And then you've got Nick Siemens, Carter Booth. And we'll see who's playing right. It could be Isaiah. He could DH. We return so much offense. It's absurd. We've had 3 straight years of guys hitting 20 home runs. And who knows what Charlie would have done last year if he had the full year. But just in the 21 games he had, just insane numbers. And a pretty decent right fielder, too. I was impressed by his athleticism out there. And then on the mound, we don't.
Plays. He said he made some fantastic plays out there, especially near the end of the year.
Out there. The bullpen, I think, is where we lost the most pieces with GT, Joe Ball, Eli Schubert all graduating. Cam Smith's back for his 5th year. We'll look to see him he was our closer last year, him and GT, but we'll see what role they have him in. Jake Green, I think you'll see him kind of do it all from starting to being in the bullpen. Jace Hansen's back. All conference pitcher in Dallas McGill is back. So we've got a good core returning, but I also know that Jake is really excited about some of the guys that he's brought in.
Yeah, that's always the fun. I mean, we say this about every sport, but it's always the fun with the new year of seeing who's going to be those new faces that step up, because that's just how college athletics work.
Yeah.
They're only here for a few years, and you can't rely on them for too long. And
Mm-hmm.
and especially with the way things work now, with how many people transfer and move around, it makes it even more difficult. And it's gonna be really interesting to see what LC is able to do. We are starting to get close to the end of this contract, so that we start figuring out what's going to happen with the World Series after that. So if it were to move, it would be nice to get one more win here at home before things change.
Yeah.
If they do, we'll see.
Yep, we've got
what
2 years
happens.
left on the contract. So, and
Yeah.
then I know, there's always talks about extensions, and we'll see what happens when we get there. But we've got it, I believe, through 2025.
Yeah, it's coming up extremely quick, and I know Brooke and everybody over there is probably already in talks of seeing what the plans are going to be or what has to happen. And I mean, if she could get the deal that the WWE just got from Netflix, that'd be fantastic. I don't know if you saw that,
No,
but
I don't follow fake wrestling.
yeah, for one show, not their entire network of stuff, but Netflix is going to air Monday Night Raw live starting in January of next year. It's a 10-year contract for $5 billion for one weekly show. WWE is rolling in the money. That's what happens when you're fake. But it's that got announced today. I'm like, how do I get that?
How do I get $5 billion?
Yeah, right. I haven't figured it out yet. How do I get $5? That's what I'm trying to fight. Let's just get $5. Let's just start there. How about that? But yeah, baseball is coming up extremely quick. We'll talk about how busy February is, especially for Alisha, who has all the crossover going on. Tennis just got going on. We got a little bit took off, but now she gets to figure out what dance is going on. We start getting to the end of basketball, the beginning of baseball, and just an absolute cluster of things. It is also the same way for Hagen and I, as you've already seen. We have yet to do a show together in 2024.
He just doesn't like you.
That's 100% true. And I don't even know if Clarkson actually has a basketball game going on tonight, but that's his excuse, is that he's saying that there's a Clarkson basketball game. But February for us is also extremely busy, because then you get into the tournament time for basketball, and the boys and the girls sides completely flip their schedules, especially on the Idaho side. So girls start districts while boys still play. I have 1 week where it is boys play on Monday, girls play their first round of districts on Tuesday, the boys play again on Wednesday, the second round of districts is on Thursday for the girls. And if they make it to the third one, then they play that Saturday. It's just a mess. But we are going to do our best to give you full-on coverage here every Tuesday. There might have to be a Monday show here and there once we get into the playoffs. Next week, it will not be me. It'll be Robert Hagen back for the first time in several weeks, and he'll have to have a guest as Lewiston will actually play again at home, and it'll be on a Tuesday night, of course, because that's just how things go. But just bear with us. We are trying to have a normal R&R Sports Report again. It feels like it's been months since we've had a normal show, back-to-back weeks even. It's been a mess. We had just Monday shows all of December, and now we have all sorts of guests here in January. And I'm a little worried about my second hour, because Erik has not responded to me all day long. So hopefully he is getting ready for the second hour. I know Robert Taylor's been hanging out. He wants to talk about some Chiefs. So hopefully maybe I can talk him into sticking around longer if need be. Talk about some high school stuff real quick before I let Alisha get out of here. Another big event that's going on over at the P1FCU Activity Center is this Friday night. The Golden Throne takes place over there. The craziest night on the calendar in any sport in the area.
That, please don't break the bleachers.
Did they fix the?
They fixed the one
home side.
Yeah.
Good.
Please don't break it again.
Yes.
Please
we need
in the
them.
stands. Don't venture up.
I had been wondering what it was going to be like if those had not gotten fixed, with how packed that place is.
Yeah, those ones, yep, they are fixed. Please don't break them. I need them like that.
Yeah, so we will see how all of that goes. Again, the girls will start at 6 p.m. on Friday, boys at 8 p.m. Show up early, because that place gets packed really quick. The students actually show up for this. Huh?
People start showing up at noon.
Yeah, I think I showed up 3 or 4 o'clock last year to make sure I got set up before it got crazy and I didn't have to walk around people, and parents were already moving things around and trying to figure out where they wanted to sit. And it gets absolutely insane over there. The girls lead the series 19-9. The boys lead the series, the Lewiston girls, I should say. Lewiston boys lead the series 16-12. Both Lewiston teams did win last year. But Clarkson did win the Golden Throne. And there's so many people that get so upset when one team wins the basketball games and the other team wins the throne. It's like the throne has nothing to do.
It's all spirit.
With the play on the court. We're there to root and holler and have a good time and cheer on those 4 teams. But the Golden Throne, as Alisha said, it's a spirit award. It's what the students did throughout the week as far as raising money for charity and all of the events that they put on top of the amount of sportsmanship and cheering that they do throughout the 2 games. It has nothing to do with the results on the court, and it shows every year. But people every year on my Facebook timeline get so upset, especially last year. Lewiston won both games, but Clarkson won the Golden Throne. How does that work? Because the points don't matter. Whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter as far as basketball goes.
The points don't matter. Thank you for hearing.
Yes, it matters to the players on the floor and for the standings. And
the toilet does
the games matter. But if you want to win the toilet, those games, it does not matter. Last year, Lewiston girls again came away with the win, 74-69. It was Zoe Kessinger who hit a 3 inside a minute to go to put the Bengals out in front. It was the most points combined in Golden Throne history on the girls' side, the 143 points that the 2 put up last year. I'm really curious how either of these games are going to go. As I've said many times on this, the Lewiston teams were in complete flux this year. New head coach for the Lewiston girls side with Julie Fisher, and basically a whole new squad. How about this? 60 of the 74 points that were scored by Lewiston last year were on players that are not on the team this year. Bae Dellert scored 7 and Addie MacArthur scored 7. Bengals do not have a high-powered offense in general, but I'd be really curious who is going to step up in that one. Kendall Wallace had 26 points for Clarkston last year. From the stats that I always get from Denny, and hopefully I did the math right, but she has 42 points combined in her 2 appearances at the Golden Throne, which puts her 24 points behind her older sister, Ashlyn Wallace, who plays up at the University of Idaho for most in a career at the Golden Throne, and the way she can shoot the 3. Be curious to see if she gets there. The Clarkson girls right now 14-0 on the year. They are playing right now. I'm sure I'll get some updates from Robert Hagan as the rest of the show gets on. Lewiston girls 7-12 on the year. They lost both of their games, both the Coeur d'Alene and Lake City over the last week. 2 of the better teams in the state, so you can't blame them there. Boys got a 52-40 win last year, but again, 42 of those 52 points were on players that are no longer on the team. Drew Hottinger had 5. Jordan Bramlett had 5. There's a few other players that played. Rylan Gomez, who's been a really good player for Lewiston this year, was held scoreless in that game. Parker Kishman-Bogar also was held scoreless. He's been a decent player for him this year as well. For Clarkson, it's going to be Carter Steinwan, Josh Hoffman, and Xander Van Tyne are the 3 to really watch offensively. I think this will be the more competitive game just because that Clarkson girls team is so good. Watching them during the Avista Holiday Tournament, they're a lot of fun to watch. But what Julie has been able to do with the Lewiston girls squad, you can't really count them out either. Right now in the year for the boys, Clarkson 7-6 on the year. Lewiston is 9-6. You said you're going to hang out a little bit for it.
Yeah.
I know you usually try to avoid the Golden Throne and the craziness for it, but have you been able to watch any of this stuff and how crazy it gets over there at the Activity Center?
Oh, yes. So Lewiston High School has a really, really neat streaming setup, and it's even gotten better this year. They got a grant. They've got a whole trailer that's decked out in streaming gear. So I'll be checking their setup out, and they might help us a little bit during first and second round. So really, really interested to see the kind of production they put on.
It's
and I want to watch
phenomenal.
Wallace will be here next year. She'll be a Warrior next year, so I would like to see her play and see. I mean, I read about her all the time, so seeing her on the court would be pretty neat.
Yeah, Kendall getting more experience on the floor. She'll play at collegiately, and yes, the setup that Lewiston has for their production is just phenomenal. What they've been able to put together. It's all student run. I know I've talked about it on this show before. I raved about it after the Avista Holiday Tournament because I was jealous. And the kids put on they especially for the Avista Holiday Tournament, they had so much work. They were there for all 22 games over the 3 days doing production. They have a replay system. They have a whole production truck that they have put together. If you want to check out their streams for any of their home games, you go to LHS Bengals on YouTube to watch their production. And they also have all their other weekly stuff that they will post up. And I've told many of them before, just to show you how old I am. Not only did I go to high school at Lewiston over 20 years ago now, but when I was in any of these kind of productions, I did video recording for basketball games, and it was just me and one of those handheld cameras. And there was 2 of us, and it wasn't live streamed or anything. It was just so we could take highlights on to put at the end of the year video. And that was it. And as far as radio goes, there was a radio station in the closet of a teacher's room.
Wow.
That was rarely touched. That's what we had when I was in high school. Now they have all sorts of stuff. Yeah. You talk about turning 30 this year. I turned 40 next month. So I am old as dirt. But yeah, Golden Throne, super excited for that one this Friday. Robert Hagan will be here on Tuesday to talk all about that with whoever he gets to come on the show, and we'll see who wins the basketball games, who ends up getting the old golden toilet. But before I let you go, Alisha, and let you get back with your puppies, just kind of run through this week in LC sports for everybody, because like we talked about, we're getting into the crazy season for you.
We are. So, yeah, dance, their first competition ever. They're at the Midland Invitational, and they have a tri-meet with Midland and Hope International. Basketball's in the Seattle area with Evergreen and Northwest. Track and field's back in Spokane for the Inland Northwest Invitational. And that's it for this weekend. But once February starts, add baseball into the mix and add both men's and women's tennis into the mix. And you have a crossover season.
It's going to be a lot of fun come February. Alisha, I always appreciate you when you come on, and I'm sure you'll get with me about some of these other sports and stuff as we go on throughout the week, and say goodbye to the dogs as well.
Say bye, Freddie. Hunter.
Say, okay. They were mostly good for this hour, so I'll give them credit.
All right.
All right, thanks,
Alicia. Bye.
Right. Thanks, Alisha. That is Alisha. Now we'll just go right into Erik Watkins, who hopped on. I was teasing you a little bit before you came on, because I sent you messages a few hours ago and had not seen you even look at him yet. So I'm like, hopefully Erik remembered this, but he's here. What's going on, man?
Back in my day, you needed to send a carrier pigeon to get a message to somebody. I'm just kidding. I'm only a couple
Robert
of
Hagan
years behind you.
Robert Hagan knows all about the carrier pigeons, all right? Like while I'm old, I as I say, I'm not Robert Hagan old as well. Erik, man, we talk all this local sports for this first hour. Now let's really get into it. Let's get into the National Football League, as we are down to the final 4. We have the AFC and NFC championship games coming up this weekend. But before we look at those matchups, I want to talk about how we got there, what you thought about the divisional rounds. Some really close, really entertaining games, except this first one we're going to talk about. Baltimore Ravens just took it to the Houston Texans, 34-10. Robert Taylor and I talked about how we would have loved to have thought Houston had a chance in that game. They really never did, as we thought. The defense for Baltimore was great. We were worried a bit about taking the 2 weeks off. It showed its face for the first quarter or so, but as that game got going on, the Ravens just looked unstoppable.
And I was noting this going into week 18 with the strategy with the bye week. And I said when it came to the Ravens, you can overcome rust. You can overcome rust quickly, as they somewhat did. You can't overcome injury. They made the right choice. And For everything in that game, all of the pressure was on Lamar Jackson. The narrative, you're 1-3 in the playoffs, number 1 seed in franchise history, second time ever. What are you going to do? The defense did their job, making CJ Stroud's life a total nightmare. But on offense, good runs by Gus Edwards, Lamar making plays. This is exactly what I expected. Kudos to Houston. Nothing to hang your head about, but at some point it was going to run out, and this is exactly what happened.
Yeah, obviously Houston outperformed what we thought they were going to do coming into the year, to the point we had them 31st in our power rankings in the preseason. So CJ Stroud had a phenomenal year. Devin Singletary was fine as the running back as well. They also had injuries in the wide receiver core. So they really were the big surprise this year, and their run does come up a bit short. But like you said, very expected at this point against the Baltimore Ravens, who really showed why they got the number 1 seed. They look like the best team left in the NFL, though some would question or put up the team that they're about to face in the AFC Championship game because of what they do in the playoffs. And really, I can't really go against those thoughts as well. We'll talk about the AFC Championship game in a little bit, but that one's going to be a blast. Somebody, I think it was Rich Eisen, said yesterday that these are the 4 best teams in the National Football League are going to be our last 4 remaining, and I think I would agree with that. Baltimore being one of them. Lamar Jackson was nearly perfect in this game over the weekend. 16-22, only 152 passing yards, but he didn't need them. Did throw for 2 touchdowns, ran for 100 yards, ran for 2 more, really took over the game. And what I've said for weeks is Lamar Jackson, while maybe his numbers aren't insane, he has this crazy ability to stretch out plays that no other quarterback has. Like we look at quarterbacks like Michael Vick and go, look at the big plays that he can create with his legs, or Josh Allen, who makes some fantastic, crazy long plays with his legs. Lamar Jackson, while he can, and there's several highlight packages out there of him making big plays with his legs, he is much more capable staying behind the line of scrimmage, just creating 5, 6, 7 more seconds for his wide receivers, and it becomes almost impossible for the defense to stop him.
And that was always the knock on Lamar. But being an ACC guy, watching him at Louisville, I looked and said, he is terribly underrated as a pocket quarterback in that pocket sense. Everybody just looked and made those similar comparisons, as you mentioned, with his legs. But the fact that his main awareness is, I'm going to look downfield. I'm going to go through all my reads. If I've got pressure, I'm not immediately just going to take off. I'm going to scramble out of that pressure because I know I've got to use my arm. And the fact that he, after all this time, remains arm first, very, very dangerous. And you see that why they were able to build and get these receivers around him, making them even more capable than they already are.
Yeah, the one big worry that we had for Baltimore throughout the year was just the fact that their running backs kept going down to injuries, and they were bringing in 4th, 5th, 6th stringers just try to put things together. They rushed for over 200 yards combined, along with, of course, Lamar Jackson. But Baltimore definitely the most dominating performance on the weekend, and we will see what they can do against Kansas City in the conference championship game. But we'll look at the other game that happened on Saturday. I was only able to watch the last 7 or 8 minutes of the 4th quarter in this one, as we were just getting back from Boise right around that time. But San Francisco holds on 24-21 against the Green Bay Packer team, which was a lot of fun to watch. Youngest team ever to win a playoff game. What Jordan Love has been able to do has been phenomenal. Unfortunately, his last pass of the season is one he would like to forget for the rest of his life. Not maybe his worst pass of his career at this point. But just your thoughts on Green Bay and their performance and a losing effort against the 49ers.
If I'm anybody else in the NFC North, Detroit included, even with their success, I'm looking at Green Bay and saying, not again.
Mm-hmm.
All the talk early on with Jordan Love, how he was very middling, potential talk of being a bust. Now, this is a team that not only potential generational talent at quarterback, potential talent all around. And the teams that are going to be most dangerous in the future are the teams that can grow together. I liked what I saw early on. I liked the game planning and strategy and the fact that they held tough. They didn't let the moment get to them. Big defensive plays, underrated at times defensively, going up against Brock Purdy. But again, that one pass, it happens, but future's bright in Wisconsin. That's going to make a few other teams miserable.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is getting up there in age as far as running backs go, but he was fantastic again, went over 100 yards. I thought he was the big difference maker over the last month and a half for the Packers and was really excited to see that. Romeo Doubs obviously was extremely good in the receiving game. Christian Watson was still not 100%. But I'm with you. The bright or the future is bright for the Packers for sure. We look at the San Francisco 49ers in this game. Brock Purdy does not have his best game. You would say for the first three quarters that maybe the lights were a bit too bright for the young quarterback. A lot of people they're always going to question Purdy because he was Mr. Irrelevant, and they're going to while we put Patrick Mahomes in a different light and we over critique him, it's because of the success that he has. For Brock Purdy, it's only because he was the last pick in his draft class that he can't be successful. He can't be an MVP candidate. I mean, look at all these great players he has around him. But it did show the first three quarters. The rain really kind of got to him and the 49ers. Obviously, Deebo Samuel going down with his back injury is a big storyline to watch. But that last drive for Brock, while it was not flashy, it didn't have to be flashy. He's not a flashy quarterback, but he made some phenomenal throws, especially after George Kittle dropped an easy first down. But I think it gave me more hope for Brock going forward, that final drive.
Yeah, because even with what Kyle Shanahan likes to do, especially offensive side on the ball with his talent, using Run CMC, using Deebo Samuel, all these guys, sometimes you just want composure. What do we know with San Francisco quarterbacks in big moments? Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jeff Garcia, and those. Composure. Do you have that in those moments? And Brock Purdy showed, even though he was human and looked human, he's like, all right, I've got this, settled down, was able to make the different throws that he had to make. Nothing big, just okay. Mr. Kittle, going to try him again. Out patterns, what have you. It's just they slowed down enough, and Brock Purdy was able to slow down right with it, led to success.
So one thing with especially NFL playoff football, yes, you're going to have your blowouts every so often with what Baltimore did to Houston. But for the most part, it's like these other three games where it's going to come down to one score and what you're able to do. Do you avoid making that one big mistake? Can you make the plays when it matters? And really everything kind of sets up for those final 7 or 8 minutes. That was the case here. Neither team could really, take a good stranglehold on this one. And the 49ers come up with the bigger plays than the Packers do. But I'm with you. I think the Packers are going to be a threat in the NFC for years to come. There's going to be question marks, of course. There's going to be question marks all over the league. But just a fantastic performance by them. I know Packers fans are a little sad that their season is over. But that's another team that absolutely surprised from what we were expecting come the preseason earlier this year. So really fun to see them. You look at the Sunday games and a really fun one between two teams that really aren't ones that you think about when you talk about teams that have a chance to win the Super Bowl. But Detroit and Tampa Bay really had a good back and forth battle. Detroit comes away with a win at home. It's the first time since 1957 that the Lions have won 2 playoff games in a year. By the way, they won the championship that year. It was not the Super Bowl. It was just the NFL championship. But what Detroit is doing has been so much fun. But before we talk about them, because we'll be able to talk about them and their matchup this weekend, just talking about Baker Mayfield here. He gets bounced around different teams. It doesn't work for him in Cleveland. He goes to Carolina. Nothing goes well there, and he gets completely sent off to the Rams. Does a great job. That same week, he became a Ram to step in for an injured Matthew Stafford and get a win with Los Angeles. Now he comes to Tampa Bay to be the guy that follows Tom Brady. And not only does he follow him, he follows him right into the playoffs. He had him in a position to possibly win this game on the road. What does the future look like for Baker Mayfield to you?
To be the first ever #1 overall pick to play for 4 different teams in his first 6 seasons, I honestly think that he has found a home. We look at the situation and what he did. We know what he is on the field. You're going to get flashes of brilliance, but sometimes you're going to get mistakes. That happens with everyone. He's not entirely made. He's a little bit better than that if you give him opportunities and a chance. But he channeled what he did in Cleveland, leading them to their first playoff win since '94. But it's the Cleveland Browns. You could say what you will about them as an organization. Carolina, another organization in turmoil. We see what's going on with David Tepper. What happened in LA with a good team, a good coach in Sean McVay, that's what really revitalized him. And now you've got a great structure in Tampa Bay. I see him sticking around for a while. I would hope the rest of his career, especially for him, but for right now, the Bucs have their guy, and they have a few of those weapons to continue to build around him. And that's going to be great, not just for Tampa Bay, but for Baker himself.
And honestly, I think Baker would want to stick around if the Buccaneers would re-sign him, just for them giving him that extra chance and keeping his career alive. For Tampa Bay and for Baker, the NFC South continues to be wide open going forward. We'll see what Bryce Young is able to do in his second year with Carolina. Atlanta is a very interesting team. They have a ton of talent. We'll see who they end up being or getting for their head coach as they continue to just interview everyone under the sun. I am waiting for Robert Taylor, who is about to join us and talk about his team. He says he's in a hotel. I'm about to ask him if he is in Atlanta right now interviewing for that job because, again, everyone is interviewing for that spot. So Tampa Bay is in a really good spot, and we'll get there. But for Detroit, again, what an awesome story. They are now going to be the darlings for those of us that do not have a team left in this field. I think we will all become kind of de facto Lions fans just for the cool story of it all. We'll get into our predictions here later on in the show. But Jared Goff, again, he gets sent away from the Rams. And we all think, all right, well, that worked out so good for Los Angeles. They won the Super Bowl. But Detroit has now really built this fantastic squad. And Jared Goff has been so good with them. We talk about Baker's redemption story. What a redemption story for Jared Goff.
Yeah, and this was another one for all the success he had in LA, getting them to that Super Bowl. The pressure was kind of on him. Another #1 overall draft pick, the big team in LA, coming back, all this and that. It was a lot of bright lights. He handled the bright lights well. But as you had mentioned, it was those situations to where there were just one too many critiques. And for the environment that is in LA, having a winner, having a consistent winner, they felt it wasn't going to be it. Now coming into Detroit, them rebuilding, Dan Campbell biting the kneecaps, the pressure was off. And he realized, okay, I am a good quarterback. I can be a good quarterback. He just takes the time to thrive. Meet Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, just going for it. Now you see, hey, it works. And got a little bit of an extra boost with worrying about Sam Laporta. They signed Zach Ertz, trying to activate him for the NFC Championship game. You never know. Another bit to add to the storyline.
Right. Real quick before we move on to Kansas City and Buffalo, as a numbers guy, I know it ended up not mattering with the way the rest of the game went, but I know a lot of the Twitter or X first lost their minds when Tampa Bay was down by 14 and scored a touchdown and went for 2.
Yeah.
It is the correct move. Do you disagree?
Somewhat, because now, analytically, yes, you are more likely to go ahead, get the 2-point conversion, and put yourself, if you're going to stop, get a touchdown, tie, an extra point, takes the lead. But in an environment like that, if I change the scenery and say the game is in Tampa Bay, I'm all for going for 2. You lean more into the energy of the home crowd to try to get that win. If you're on the road, fans are feeding the energy to the other team. Yes, you're playing overtime, different rules potentially, but if you just get there, wear the crowd down, wear the team down, you have better chances. So I didn't necessarily like it in that specific situation. Overall, I can understand.
I'll just disagree. And while it does not work out, they do not get the 2. I'm with Mila Kunis. It's not the wrong decision to go for it. It was the wrong decision to throw the worst play of all of football with the corner fade route, which never works out in the NFL. All you're trying to do is
why do teams still have that play? Really?
It drives me nuts. But to your point, yes, you score a touchdown there, you go for 2, you get it. Now, if you get the ball and you score, which you have to do anyways, you have a chance to win the game at that point. If you don't get it, which they didn't, then you're still down 8, you go for 2, and you have a chance. 50-50 play there. Totally get it. Plus, with the extra points getting pushed back over these last couple of years, how many missed kicks did we see? Especially in these playoffs. We're about to talk about one. I mean, yes, that one was outdoors. Detroit is indoors, so slightly different situations. But I'm not trusting a kicker to make 2 extra points in clutch situations to get us into overtime. I would much rather get the 2-point conversion, nail it, and then the extra point would be to win the game afterwards. I am also I put my foot down on this strategy, and I'm also one of the few that believe if you're up by 1, you score a touchdown to go up by 7, you go for 2. Because then you make it a 2-possession game, game's over. You don't make it, yes, you've now opened the door for your opponent to go for 2 and win the game. But unless you're facing Dan Campbell, they're not going to go for 2 at the end of the game. So to me, you go for 2 and you close out the game.
I'm going to bookmark this. And I want to come on because I have something of a challenge for you. I know how you are about alternative leagues. The United Football League, while it is in its first season as a merged entity, I know how you are about first seasons. The XFL and USFL, where they came from or not. Watch those with the different extra point rules.
Yeah, theirs are complicated.
Not necessarily, but I want to come on and I want to bookmark a debate about this. Having seen a few of those games and the strategies to see what you think, any differences in that, bookmark it. Because I hear where you're coming from, and sometimes I get it, especially from those analytics, but see things evolve in different situations just to get your feel.
Right. Before we get Robert Taylor on here to talk about his Chiefs as he refuses to sit still over in the backstage area, update from Robert Hagan. The Clarkston girls remain undefeated. They are now 15-0 on the year. They defeat Shadle Park 70-26. Just not close.
Okay.
Also,
all right.
Erik was not here for the first hour of the show and the beginning. I would just want to once again reiterate that on Thursday, history will be made in the state of Idaho. Case Wynot 6 points away from breaking the Idaho State all-time scoring record for boys basketball. By the way, for those that were not here at the beginning of the show, he is in this position because he scored 68 points on Friday against Genesee, also an Idaho school record. Oh, and he had 15 rebounds and 10 assists in that game. So, Case Wynot
is in the water with
It's
basketball
crazy.
players and huge performances this week?
Yeah, NBA had a few as well. All right, let's bring him on. He's walking around his hotel room. He's so excited to tell us about his job interview with the Atlanta Falcons. It's one Robert Taylor.
Look,
What's happening,
before you get started, if you get that job, I have a good career in data analyst. I am very good at video and breaking down film. I would be an asset on your staff. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to Atlanta. No.
All right. Let Robert
yourself,
Taylor
I
on
tried.
here. Go ahead and quickly discuss your Kansas City Chiefs defeating the Buffalo Bills 27-24.
Before I do that, I just want to say regarding the Lions. I'm rooting for their fans, but the franchise can lose every single game. They ruined Barry Sanders' career, Megatron's career. The franchise does not deserve anything, but the fan base does. So I just want to point that out.
By the way, Robert, this is still a college show. Can you put your beer down?
Sorry, sir.
Sure. You're good. I appreciate you.
So,
I know you're celebrating over there. You're having a good time, but
I'm not having a good time. I'm working my butt off up here. Yeah, so much to the chagrin of nearly everybody that is sick of the Chiefs and sick of Taylor Swift and so angry at Mahomes for the one time he showed a little bit of humanity when he had one outburst on the side of the field after the refs were not consistent with what they've called the rest of the season. We're still here. They're still here. In a down year where they were broken, they couldn't figure it out. What's wrong with Mahomes? What's wrong with the Chiefs? They're back in the AFC Championship. That is his floor.
That this isn't another Arrowhead Invitational.
No. It would have been fun. It would have been fun. But the legend that can grow from going on the road and beating Buffalo and just ripping their hearts out, this time at home, yet again, and then going on the road and beating Baltimore en route to the Super Bowl is just, yeah, it would make it so much better. So, I'm not upset. But yeah, it was a good game. I got to give credit. It was a good game. The game plan was smart by Buffalo. They basically turned Josh Allen into Alex Smith. Afraid of turnovers, what have you. Our secondary is probably the best in the entire league. That's not coming from a point of bias. I really believe that. And so they tried to limit the turnovers. They just short intermediate passes, a lot behind the sticks, just to get those chunk yards because the Chiefs were going to give it to them. And once the Chiefs cracked down in the second half on all those little short plays, all the runs and everything, all the rushes, you saw Josh Allen kind of revert to Josh Allen. He wasn't making the right reads. He was getting pressured. He's trying to force the ball. And look what happened on that final drive.
And that was one of the main things that really confused me is things were going well, and I commented about this because I saw what Buffalo was doing. I absolutely hated it because the offense was treating that drive as the last drive of the game. And when you have a situation where that's the last drive of the game, you're trying to score with nothing left. I mean, look, you leave Patrick Mahomes 13 seconds. We've seen that movie before. And I'm just sitting in my head thinking, Mahomes is going to burn them. Mahomes is going to burn them. Score, get it over with, attempt to do something on defense. Then, after the 2-minute warning, passes where as you said, those short and intermediate plays, they had receivers open. Josh Allen, for one reason or another, there wasn't too much pressure on his face. He just didn't see them. And I'm like, as it went second down, third down, and then the kick, I'm like, oh no, this is bad.
No, on that final series, there was a lot of pressure on Josh. Chris Jones, while he won't show up in the stat sheet, was in his face. He's the one that caused the forced fumble. He's the one that forced the pressure that made him throw that third down pass leading into the kick to get to made him rush out of the pocket. There was a lot of pressure on him. They were getting through at that point. It's just the problem the Bills had, and this could be my bias, I don't know, with that final drive is they were more scared of Mahomes getting the ball than they were trying to win the game. If Bass did not miss that kick, the game was still over. There was 1:40 left.
Yeah.
2 timeouts. They were moving up and down on the defense all game.
Yeah.
So they were more scared.
Absolutely.
They were trying to run that clock out.
That's the one thing I noticed. We talked about Kansas City having a down year offensively. We talked about how good the defense has been. And while there are those out there going, oh, this is not Kansas City's year. And I know how difficult it is to win back-to-back years. It hasn't happened in a really long time. And that's why I don't predict the Chiefs to win and win the Super Bowl again this year, because it's just so tough to do. But I really thought it was going to be of a defensive game. Again, really cold up there in Buffalo. And those first 3 quarters, it was just an offensive slugfest. No ridiculously over-the-top plays. It wasn't like people were scoring back and forth, but neither defense was really able to shut down the other offense. I thought it was the best that Kansas City's offense has looked over the last few weeks, which is got to be a scary sign for the other 3 teams left here in this tournament. But I'm right there with you, Robert, and I know Eric agrees too. That final drive really felt like Buffalo started to tense up, and it's one of those things where they've been there before. They know what it's like. As a New York Knicks fan, it was like a fan of my team in the 90s, where it's like, all right, well, it's like literally, all right, we have a chance to finally beat Michael Jordan at home, Game 6. Oh, they won the game. We couldn't get it done. Game 7's over. Like, you could just tell the Knicks come out and it's just done. And I felt that with the Bills, where it was like, even if, like you said, they make that field goal and it's tied, the energy, at least on the sidelines, is going to be like, well, we did everything we could. But Patrick Mahomes is going to do Patrick Mahomes things. I also really thought the opening drive for Buffalo was a big sign of things to come, as they came out really tight, really awkward. Some of the plays they decided to run were rough. The lateral out of nowhere from Josh Allen, which was a forward pass, but the referees let it go. But still, for them to make that decision really felt like we absolutely have to score here on this opening drive or the game's over. So they were trying interesting things to try to do it. And it just shows that Buffalo's like, we know how this script goes when you play Kansas City in the playoffs. And it felt like they were just throwing everything out there when they didn't have to. No. And then it really showed in that final drive.
All they really had to do was stick to what got them there. Why they fired Ken Dorsey, changed their offense, everything else. It was working. And this makes you wonder, Robert, as you had mentioned in the Facebook group, this is potentially the weakest Chiefs team Josh Allen and these Bills may ever face. If you're at the point where you have this psychological creep right now, knowing that Kansas City is in a position to stick around, knowing that they're in a position to even get better, you think to yourself, and they shouldn't be thinking to themselves, are we ever going to beat them? Because that's a mindset that sets in, and after games like this, it sets in fast. That's what worries me.
Yeah, and the thing too, the reason why Buffalo got away from their game that was working the first half is because in the second half it wasn't working really. That's when they had most of their punts, and that's when they had most of their drive failures. Because if you look at the stats, if you look them up, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I've seen them. But like their yards per rush went down, their yards per play went down in the second half. Their yards total went down, rushing yards. So they started clamping down on that short game, and that's when things started falling apart because they were trying to be too cute against the Chiefs. They were trying to, they're not going to expect this, and they didn't. So the first half it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs were, able to keep them out for a good amount, 17 points, which is about what they've given up in the first half usually sometimes before they clamp down. Like I said, I think they got the best second half defense in the entire league. I don't think they've given up more than a touchdown in the second half in any game. So, yeah, man, it's just it honestly, and as much as I like to brag and I like to talk and all that stuff, I genuinely feel bad that the game ended that way for Bills fans. Right. Genuinely feel bad. So, yeah, that was a heartbreaker. I mean, it would have been better for them to watch Mahomes drive down and win the game than lose because their guy missed the kick.
I tweeted out and I sent the message to a lot of you guys. It's like, I know the joke this year has been the NFL is scripted and everyone, like Tom Grossi has this video every week about if it was scripted, this is how the meetings work. But like, what a perfect way for somebody that believes in that theory to go, see, the NFL scripted. They came out with all these commercials with Scott Norwood and the history of Buffalo Bills fans and this guy growing up as a Bills fan and having all these heartbreaks happen to him, but then he still gives his love to his team, to his son, and then his granddaughter, and he goes and buys a jersey, and it's Scott Norwood who's behind the desk selling him the jersey, and then here we are on Sunday with another wide right, and the history continues for Buffalo. It's you can't make it up.
No, you can't.
In case anybody was questioning why they continue to show Taylor Swift in the crowd during the games, just look at the ratings for this game.
Look,
Swifties came out.
as much as I have against the NFL specifically for their coverage with Taylor Swift, I've mentioned this a few times. Brittany Mahomes having Taylor Swift in that quasi chokehold up in the booth while a shirtless Jason Kelce is back chugging beer. Tell me that is not a family Christmas card. I would buy that and hang it in my room.
Yeah, I want to know who actually got more airtime on Sunday, Jason Kelce or Taylor Swift, because I think Jason ended up getting far more airtime, shirtless and wasted. He was having a good time.
I think it was about even, but then you had the one shot of like Kelce in the background, just sitting there completely shirtless, just while they're showing Taylor and everything celebrating. But yeah, no, it was a fun game. Watching Jason Kelce just go crazy, cheering his brother and getting drunk was just hilarious.
All right. Before we let you go and get your thoughts real quick on the Baltimore Kansas City game, I will ask you both one question. There's a question I heard on Rich Eisen, and I'm very curious about. I am one that still contends that this is not the next Peyton Manning and Tom Brady feud until Josh Allen can do it in the playoffs. To me, this is Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers. However, the question has been made, is the window now shut for Buffalo? We kept hearing rumors that if they could not make a run, that they might make changes in the coaching staff. We thought that with Dallas and Philadelphia, and that didn't happen. I don't expect it with the Bills, but we all thought the Bills were going to have a down year, and I think they did for a while. They made a great run the last 2 months of the season, helped by Miami going through their woes. But is the window shut for the Bills now?
I think if you look at their cap space issue next year, how much they're over the cap, plus look at some of the contracts, like they're stuck with Von Miller. They're stuck with that guy. I think he's got like a 20-something or 30-something $1 million cap hit next year, and it's like in the 20s if they try to cut him in dead space, something like that. So I don't know if their window shut completely, but for the next season or two, it's probably going to be really rough.
I completely agree. You look at the situation, you see now what's going on in the division with Miami, and like Ken Griffey Jr. said about the Mariners in '94, they picked a bad season to have a great year. the Bills have picked a bad time to have great teams because you've got Josh Allen, you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Joe Burrow. These three, and you can include the likes of Lamar Jackson, or if you want, these are going to be dog fights for years on end. And only one of those four, at most, any given season is going to make a Super Bowl. That's a tough road and a tough quartet to really stand out from. So to me, I'm with Robert. It's not shut, but you're not getting much more of a crack these next couple of years.
Yeah, Josh Allen's great. He just unfortunately happens to be playing in an era where his contemporaries just better. It's so.
With the cap issues that Robert you brought up for Buffalo, one name that really interesting to me, Stephon Diggs has an opt out after next season on this big contract that he has. He really underperformed. We heard all of the drama in the offseason last year, and they kind of threw that off to the side, that everything was fine. Well, this year, to me, really made it feel like maybe not everything is hunky-dory between Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills. Is there a possibility that he gets moved in a big trade in the offseason to try to save some of that cap space?
They should. He's terrible. He's done.
I would like everyone to remember this moment when he gets traded to the Kansas City Chiefs and Robert tells us how great
I mean, hey, you know what? Hey, he could do for Diggs what he did for Juju. Get him paid.
Yeah. Well, he already got himself paid. But Eric, do you think he gets moved?
I don't necessarily know immediately. They might kick the tires a bit, see what trades are out there. They may go ahead, just give him this one last season and be like, all right, put up or shut up. If it doesn't work, just whatever. But while there's going to be talk, I don't quite see it happening.
All right, Robert, before you go, just give us a quick thought. We know your prediction. You can give us a prediction on the internet.
It's not a prediction.
Spoiler.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can give us your prediction on the NFC side too, but you're just quick thought on Baltimore, Kansas City this weekend.
I think it's going to be a better game than a lot of people are out there are thinking, with Ravens, their defense being just, ranked just above the Chiefs in scoring and just above the Chiefs in sacks on the season. I think I trust Spags to adjust and come up with a game plan better than I think was his name, Mike McDonald over there. And just due to history and everything, the man's got I think 4 rings as a DC now. So I think I trust. It's just going to come down to turnovers, just like with the Buffalo game. If the Chiefs can play clean ball, game plan around and scheme around the Ravens defense, I think the Chiefs pull it out. I think it's going to be lower scoring, kind of. I could see the not so much lower scoring, but I could see almost like the exact same score, 27-24 Chiefs, or vice versa. But I am going to go 27-24 Chiefs as my official prediction.
And you got a thought on who's going to win the NFC?
It's a lot closer than some people would like you to believe. I mean, they talk about the Lions defense is not good. It's a little underrated. They could get pressure. The secondary is pretty haggard, but the 49ers defense isn't that great either. It's been absolutely obliterated multiple times this season. And I could see the Lions doing the same thing with all their playmakers. So it's a close game, but I think that could be a 34-30 type game in favor of the 49ers.
Well, there you go, Robert. Thank you so much once again for hopping on after your interview with the Atlanta Falcons. I hope that all went well for you. No, I always appreciate you coming on. I'm sure I'll hear a lot from you on Sunday.
Or not. It depends on how the game goes.
Very, very true. All right. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you. All right, we got his takes on it. Let's get our takes on the AFC and NFC championship games. Real quick recap for you. In the preseason between Robert Hagan and myself, Robert nailed AFC Championship game. He said it would be Baltimore versus Kansas City, though he did say it was going to be at Arrowhead, but still he got the same two teams right. I had Cincinnati in that game against Kansas City, and Joe Burrow got hurt on the first play of practice. So fantastic pick by me. We both thought it was going to be Philadelphia at San Francisco, not Detroit at San Francisco. Robert's Super Bowl prediction is still possible. He had Baltimore losing to San Francisco. I had Cincinnati losing to San Francisco. So we will see. So let's start with the Detroit-San Francisco game. This is actually, wow, it's actually the second game. I really would have thought Kansas City Baltimore was going to close this out. But we're still going to do Detroit, San Francisco, because Hagen and I both had the 49ers in our preseason Super Bowl. We both had them, or excuse me, Hagen had San Francisco winning. I had them losing to Cincinnati, but that's not happening. But we both had them making it to the Super Bowl. We are both picking the 49ers in this game. Are you?
My head is telling me yes, but there's caveats.
Okay.
I would like to see Detroit win, no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you still, as Robert mentioned, guys like Dre Greenlaw, guys like Nick Bosa. Well, it's just a matter of timing. This was one of those years to where the ASC went first. They alternated every year. This was just a bad year for this great matchup. But if they go ahead and do what they do, take the pressure off the secondary, limit the running game from Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, help and try to clamp down, force errant passes, they can easily win. I think they do just enough, but if it ends up being Detroit with the confetti holding up the George S. Hallis Trophy, it would not surprise me. My head is going San Fran. I'm picking San Fran on a knife edge. But again, razor-thin margins.
So with that razor-thin margin, does it flip if Deebo Samuel gets ruled out for the game on Sunday?
To me, it does, because it's easier to go ahead and focus on Christian McCaffrey, easier to focus on someone like Brandon Ayuk, easier to focus on George Kittle. There aren't a lot of other top-end receivers from this Niners team that can supplement and go and beat you. It's like, all right, one of three guys to target. If we can focus on one, maybe two, we can scheme that. And that would be perfect for Detroit. Detroit would get in a huge advantage.
Yeah, I'm picking San Francisco as my pick, as I said, though I would lean Detroit if Deebo cannot play. You saw a completely different 49ers team after he went out in that game against Green Bay. I like what Dan Campbell has done with the Lions. Their offense is phenomenal. I will fight back a little bit with what Robert said. I don't think the defense is any good for the Lions, especially their secondary. But without Deebo, I think Detroit could hang with them. And I think out of the two, this is more of a shootout potential. I'm not sure what the weather is in San Francisco, if it's going to be rainy again or not on Sunday.
From what I've seen weather-wise, it potentially expects some rain, because you've got some systems going through, not as bad as it's been in Southern California, but there's at least going to be some clouds from everything.
Yeah, so that could change things too. But I think San Francisco is just overall the better team. I think Brock Purdy will have a better performance than he had against the Packers. Hopefully he can stay healthy and we're not seeing Christian McCaffrey as the quarterback like we saw for San Francisco last NFC Championship game. But very interesting. Both of these games are very intriguing to me. It's so great that we've gotten to this point. And I said this to Robert Taylor last week too, where we've gotten to this point where none of the teams left would surprise me if you told me they won the Super Bowl. Any of these four.
Not at all.
They all have a fantastic story. They all have a claim to it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So there's not going to be any shocking results to me unless somebody just blows out the other one. especially if, say, Baltimore blows out Kansas City or Detroit blows out San Francisco. I think that would be shocking to me. And I don't predict that by any means. But I think we're in for 6 or so hours of just really good football here between these teams. San Francisco, a 7-point favorite. If I was betting against the spread, I would take Detroit.
Easily. And if you're looking at Detroit now, get in now, because the minute that Deebo Samuel, any official word one way or another, especially if he's out, those sharps are going to pounce. More so than the masses, but so get in Detroit now while it's 7, because it wouldn't surprise me if that gets knocked down 6, 5.5, just in case.
The game at noon Pacific time, Kansas City at Baltimore. Ravens, a 3.5-point favorite, which is a bit shocking to me. I would have thought just straight up 3 points, but the Ravens have been extremely dominant as of late. Hagen and I are both going to take the Baltimore Ravens. Are you going to make this one a clean sweep as well, or are you going to go with Robert Taylor and take the Chiefs?
Robert Taylor, you're going to love me for this one. I've already said in conversations, Kansas City is pretty much playing with house money. With Baltimore, there's 2 narratives. If they win, this is Lamar's redemption arc. This is finally getting over the hump, starting that trajectory. If Baltimore loses, this is the first time since Memorial Stadium, January 71, where Johnny Unitas led the Colts over the Oakland Raiders 27-17, and the first ever AFC Championship game that the city is hosting a game this big. For that to lose, it's going to focus on him. It's going to focus on the team. Kansas City's 2 narratives, it's either, Mahomes in a down year with all the doubters and the haters has an opportunity to get yet another ring, his 4th Super Bowl appearance in 6 years. Or imagine what he would do if he had better receivers and they still got this far. I'm sorry. For as good as Baltimore is, and especially it's on Lamar, just the pressure, and even to stay healthy. If universe forbid something happens in this game, the Ravens are done completely. But this is just another one to me. The Chiefs pull this out. They're right back in almost home stomping grounds in Vegas.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. And it would not shock me as well, especially with what we talked about with Robert and how, it starts getting in your head. It got in Buffalo's head that the game was still really close, that they were down by 3 with the ball with too much time on the clock to really run it all the way out.
Yeah.
Though it really messed with their strategy and what they wanted to do, and they got left kicking a long field goal and ended up missing it. Obviously, you don't expect that for Baltimore with Justin Tucker, where if they get in that situation, you expect him to make it. But still, you got to be in that situation, especially because with how good Kansas City's defense is, especially in the second half.
Yep.
It really feels like this is one of those games where the Ravens have to have a 2-point or 2 possession lead at halftime. They almost have to at this point, just to not have that looming over their head. And I'm saying this as somebody who's picking Baltimore, and it's difficult to say that they're going to have a 2-position lead over a really good team. But it just feels like if Patrick Mahomes has a chance to tie or win the game at any point late in this contest, it's going to start messing with the other team. Now, yes, Harbaugh is a fantastic coach for the Ravens. They've all been there before. Lamar Jackson had a fantastic game last week to kind of get some of the playoff bugaboo away from him. But I talked about it about Michael Jordan. There's that stigma with Patrick Mahomes that this is January football. Nick Wright talks about it all the time on First Things First. It's a whole different season. And Patrick Mahomes, until he's beat especially by somebody not named Tom Brady, but until he is actually beat by somebody, I'm always going to believe that he's going to lead his team to a victory.
Yeah, and this is why you set the line 3.5. realistically, that makes sense because for home field advantage and how it's changed in the last several years and what it really means, if you were to put them in a neutral site, it's only a 1-point difference. Baltimore would only be a 1-point favorite. I'm good with that because, again, those razor-thin margins. But, as you said, hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. This time, I'm not.
That's fair. And it's tough, but I think the run game for Baltimore and the different weapons that they have could run the clock. I know the Bills attempted to do that. They had some fantastic drives against Kansas City. We'll see what the Ravens are able to do. But once again, with the NFC Championship game where the 49ers had a 7-point margin as far as Vegas is concerned, I would take Detroit and the points, but pick San Francisco. It's only a 3.5-point difference between Baltimore and Kansas City. While I'm picking Baltimore, I would take Kansas City in the points. Just a Justin Tucker last-second field goal maybe, or Kansas City needing 2 scores and they get one, but they don't get the onside kick. Something like that. Baltimore is not going to end up with a win that's more than 7 points. And I will take the edge of, you give me a field goal with Kansas City there.
Exactly. And that's why Vegas was smart enough to add that hook. Smart enough to add the hook because that's what's going to bite a lot of people.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Real quick, before we head out for this week, a couple of coaching hires in the National Football League. We already had Jared Mayo for New England a week or two ago. We all kind of saw that one coming just from but though until Tennessee had gotten rid of Vrabel, and then that really changed the way a lot of us thought. But Mayo was kind of that successor over there in New England. But Antonio Pierce does end up getting the head coaching job for the Raiders. This is something opposite of what Las Vegas did last year with the interim head coaching position. Was this the right move this time for LV?
Absolutely. This is something that Mark Davis got right. He sees the players, he sees the attitude, he sees the mentality. This is going to harken back to the old school, hard-nosed Raiders football. This is something they got right, and the players are going to show it. Very good move.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this move. See what he is able to do with a full season. Sometimes, though, these interim coaches, they light the fire for the players, and then the next year when it's all on them, things kind of fade out. We'll see what happens, but I'm rooting for him. I was a big fan of him as the interim coach for the Raiders. And then Brian Callahan was a surprising hire for the Tennessee Titans, the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. And this, to me, just feels like it's not going to work out. The Titans right now, they have so many question marks on the offense. Who's going to be their quarterback next year? Derrick Henry looks like he is done with Tennessee. He said his goodbyes on week 18. So you bring in an offensive coordinator, which you have to this day and age. You have to bring in an offensive guy right now. But very unproven coach getting into a situation that has a lot of turnover coming. I don't think that you as a Jacksonville Jaguar fan are going to have to worry about the Tennessee Titans for the next couple of years.
You say that now, yet look at what happened week 18. We're always going to have to worry about them. But that said, see what they do in the draft. See what they do if the decision is going to be built around Will Levis, because I think that's the way they're going. It's going to be ugly. It's just a matter of how ugly and to see whether or not Titans fans are going to be looking forward to an upswing or just a shiny new stadium.
And then real quick, before we bounce off of the NFL to finish off this show, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, where do they end up? They both interviewed twice already with Atlanta, but so has everyone else in the NFL world. Where do they go?
I can see Harbaugh, if he decides to leave and not get a fat enough contract with Michigan to try to run it back, I honestly see him taking the Chargers job. with everything with Justin Herbert, knowing that they're a couple pieces away, what he did with San Francisco back in the day, he can do a similar job. But with how Arthur Blank runs the Atlanta Falcons, I think Belichick gets that job. It may be a dumpster fire, but it may just be a situation like with Vince Lombardi in Washington, getting early success out of nowhere. It could happen.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant right now with Bill Belichick in Atlanta. I thought that was a sure thing when he had a second interview, but they continue to interview everybody. They have things set up for after the championship games to interview more. So I'm worried that maybe things did not line up for them. I think Belichick would work wonders for Atlanta. That's a team that I think with a coach like him could go crazy in the NFC South. But I've been saying it with the new ownership in Washington, with Magic Johnson being part of that group, they're going to want to make the splashy move. I want Bill Belichick to be a commander. I think that would be a really fun fit.
Look,
will it happen? Probably not, but that's what I want.
The man would be in lacrosse heaven, not too far from Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland and everything. But if you're going to make that push, you're going to have him there. Make bigger moves to get back to a rebuilt RFK. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I will not stand you. I'm putting that out there.
And then finally, we talked about at the beginning of the show with Alisha Alexander, but Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Todd Helton are now Baseball Hall of Famers. Your thoughts on this class?
Mauer, I get it. Beltre, for the most part, I get it. With Helton, fantastic as he was, I don't know. Maybe it's my thing with the Rockies during his time, even though they did get Rocktober, that World Series where they just got swept aside in more ways than one by Boston. That's the one I have questions about. The other two I saw and I'm like, all right, maybe not first ballot, but I can't entirely say no.
Yeah, I love that Beltre got in and he, 93%, I think is what I said earlier on in the show. That's a fantastic poll there. Helton gets in by 18 votes, barely getting in. I liked Helton, but I do agree with you. I think he was in the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame to me. Just the fact that he was in Colorado and there's not been those big names, I think, for the Rockies. And the fact that he's succeeded in Colorado and not by hitting home runs, which a lot of people expect with the thinner air up there, by hitting over 300 all the time and just being one of the most just clutch hitters all the time. That makes sense. Mauer barely getting in, 4 votes over the limit mark. Very cool. Was a big fan of him. Good catcher for Minnesota, and I definitely liked his career. Billy Wagner, I will guarantee he gets it next year. Next year is his 10th and final time on the ballot. He was 5 votes away this year. So I think he gets in. I haven't seen what the new names are going to be, who will be the first timers next year. But with him having one last chance and only being 5 votes away, I think Billy Wagner is as close to a lock as you can get, right?
I want to say yes. But if I see some of those other names and there's 1, maybe 2 that could make it tricky, that would be problems. But if it's someone else, with other of those who are in the Hall of Very Good, then Wagner should sail in.
Never mind. I already take it back.
You just proved my point, didn't you? You just proved my point, didn't you? I see that look.
Looking ahead to the 2025 Hall of Fame ballot, Ichiro Suzuki.
Oh! Game over.
100%er. CC Sabathia. Maybe not first ballot, but I think he gets in the Hall of Fame for sure. Felix Hernandez.
Oh,
King Felix. He's a Hall of Famer. Dustin Pedroia is a fringe one to me.
maybe not first ballot, but I'd say if doesn't get in within the first 5, he's not getting in.
Other names that I'm seeing on here that are fine, but they're not going to make it. Curtis Granderson,
No.
Brian McCann, Russell Martin, a couple of good
Mm-mm.
catchers. Troy Tulowitzki would have been a Hall of Famer if he could have ever stayed healthy. Fernando Rodney was a decent enough closer, but I don't think they all get it. I think the main ones to look for next year, Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and King Felix. And that makes it tougher for Wagner to get those extra 5 votes. Just period. So maybe he's not as locked in as I thought.
I just said it. Thank you for proving me right.
Thank Erik Watkins for coming in here the second hour. I want to thank Robert Taylor for hopping on and bragging about his Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, Alisha Alexander talking all Lewis Clark State athletics there in the first hour. Like to remind everybody, next week it will be Robert Hagan and somebody. Eric, expect a message.
I'm on standby.
I have Lewis the basketball. So for the 4th straight week, Robert and I will not have a show together. I don't remember the last time I talked sports with this guy, but we're going to have a lot of fun once we finally do. But looking at the calendar, in March, I'll get to hang out with him at this point. So we will see how things go. But Robert will be back. He'll talk all things Golden Throne. He'll talk AFC and NFC championship games and so much more, as you'll get to see him for the first time in 4 weeks. Also, go check out Bad Brackets. The animated Disney movies episode is out now. Very few people have watched it, but it was a really fun episode. But that'll be out there every Monday at noon is usually when I try to post it. Erik Watkins is back on the show the week after that one. We just recorded that yesterday, had a fun time. I still have a mess to my right for all the stuff that we talked about on that show. But you guys have a fantastic time. If you're in the area, go see the Golden Throne on Friday. If you're not, or if you're in the area, I don't care. Go watch the AFC and NFC championship games. Have a fun time. Enjoy your sports. But until next Tuesday, that's Erik Watkins. I'm Randy Isbell. This is the R&R Sports Report, and we